not start with a very great. If they start playing.
Well, no, one of the things I used to do for, I cast my moves and I helped her co-create our product owner course.
You can't tell exactly what kind of mic is in there.
What's your structure for power? Maybe
There's a tag.
Yeah, but
it's not here's your video game. And so we were, how do I do live movie? Here's how I take 5 videos and splice them together, put some transitions, next thing you know. Awesome.
Folks, 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. We'll get started right on time. Did y'all do some trading?
The red is stressing me out.
Yeah. It's the red table right here. Hey folks, welcome everybody to experiment-driven development. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, Brad. You're welcome, Mike. Let's see. I know I can shout, but maybe this will help. Good.
Is that better? Oh, wow. Okay, welcome everybody to experiment-driven development. Our goal here today is to introduce you to a technique that will help ensure that you're always building the right product with very high levels of innovation. And we've got some activities scheduled in here, and there's 3 or 4 of those, so you'll actually get to experience the technique. We've got a lot to cover, and it's going to go right up to the end, so I'm going to jump into it, and just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Mike Hall. I'm a senior Agile coach trainer at Agile Velocity. We're based in Austin, Texas, but we have clients and coaches all over the U.S. My background is in software development, 15 plus years using traditional waterfall methods, and now 15 years using Agile methods. So I've seen it all. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And usually right now is when I transition over to Braz, since I mentioned the word ugly, but I'm going to say, instead of saying, now that I've mentioned ugly, I'm going to mention the word great and ask Braz to introduce himself.
That was not a good save. It was a good try, but it wasn't a good save. Hi, I'm Ries. I'm a coach. I also work with Mike at Agile Velocity. So after that introduction, maybe that won't be much longer after we get back.
Right.
Love you. I've been a coach for going just over 10 years now, full-time for 5 years. Before being a coach, I was a coach and a Scrum Master, a coach and a product owner, a coach and a development manager. So my experience has been in background. About the last 3 years of my Agile journey, I've actually been working with marketing teams and operations teams outside of traditional software development. So,
Good.
that's all. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Raz. So, just a quick context here. What you're seeing here is our Agile Velocity path to agility. And as you can see, you may be familiar with the Satir model of change. It's all about determining your current status quo and then introducing some change, and then through continuous improvement and integration and practice, achieving a new status quo. And what we've done is we've superimposed a number of phases, if you will, in terms of that to help guide our enterprise transformations, starting with align, then learn, moving to predict, and of course, this is kind of the holy grail right now, is for all Agile teams to get predictable. And then continuing on with that, beyond predictable, is accelerate and adapt. And when we talk about experiments, one school of thought is that experimentation is really here in the latter phases, if you will, once the team becomes predictable. There's another school of thought that says, you know, even for teams new to Agile or teams looking to get better and become predictable, they can use experiments in order to help achieve that predictability. So I'm a big experiment lover, so I'm fine with experimentation throughout all of these phases. So here's the big question challenge for today. What if we found out that the product that we're building no one really wants? Has that ever happened to you? Can I admit to you that about 8 years of my entire software development career was in working really hard on products that nobody wanted. And, you know, we would hit on scope, on or under budget, and on schedule, and then there's basically no market. So one horror story from my past, I'm sure you have your horror stories also. The year was 1988, and Nortel Networks, where I was an employee of, decided to go toe-to-toe with IBM and Cisco in terms of developing data network systems. Just simple data networking, and ours was X25 based. And so Nortel invested $100 million, formed software and hardware development teams, QA teams, and made a massive investment, and defined like a 14-month project to come out with this product that would deliver a $200 million market annually if we hit the October 1st launch day. And so like any good developers, we went to the wall. We worked 60-hour work weeks. We worked through holidays. We worked sometimes on Sunday. We missed our kids' activities, all of that. And we did hit the scope. We did come in slightly under budget, even though there was a whole lot of overtime being paid. And we missed the October 1st date by 2 weeks. We shipped it on October 15th. And then we launched the product to glorious fanfare, all kinds of write-ups in the trade rags, videos made of the official launch, and there was one customer. One insurance company bought it for I don't know how many millions of dollars, and then 3 months later told us to remove the systems because it was not satisfying what they thought that it would. So it did not meet their needs. And there were no other customers. And so 6 months later, so after the teams disbanded and went on to other projects, about 6 months later, I ran into the product manager who made that statement in the lunchroom. And I made a point to sit down by him. And after a few pleasantries, I asked him, Tony, what happened to the $200 million market for these data networking systems? And as serious as he could, he looked straight at me and he said, I told you guys, if you didn't hit the October 1st date, there would be no market for it. So in his mind, missing that date by 2 weeks was so crucial. And personally, I think it was just an assumption on his part and a big guess as to what the market was. So, you know, when I think back about this, a number of things ring true. Number one, never once in that entire year and 2 months did any of us developers ever have a conversation with the end customer. Not once. Number two, we deployed once at the end. And number three, we built all kinds of features based on assuming what our end customers would need. And we would look at what IBM and Cisco did, and we would assume our customers would have the same requirements, and we would build those features. And I call that assumption-driven development. And that's what we're here today to talk about, is a much better way of building products as opposed to relying on assumptions. And it all involves getting the customer in the loop. Okay? So, experiment-driven development. I'm going to turn it over to Braz right now, who's chugging his way back up here, and he's going to step us through a video. Actually, just watch this video. Take a few mental notes. If you would, there's an activity right after it.
I'm J.B. Brown, the Nordstrom Innovation Lab Manager, and this is the lab. We work on 1 week experiments. Somebody will have an idea and we'll find a way to figure out how to prove if the idea is going to work. And this week the Innovation Lab is going to be building an iPad app with customer feedback as we go through the week. We wanted to work in the store to make sure that we were getting customer feedback as we worked, so that we were never working on anything that wasn't valued by the customer, and only doing things that we put in value. So we'll be building a feature and testing it until we get to the point where we have something that's good enough that we can just leave and leave the iPad behind and have this new thing that customers can use.
This is the world's first flash build. It's a flash mob where a software team shows up and builds an application in a surprise location. This is the Nordstrom Innovation Lab, and we're at the flagship store downtown Seattle. Right now the team is just setting up their equipment to get started. We're going to build an iPad app that helps customers pick the best pair of sunglasses for them. We really don't know what the features are yet. We're going to use customer feedback as we go along throughout the day and the rest of the week in order to build the best thing.
So the next thing we're going to do is a user story map. So we're going to sit here and together outline all the steps the customer would take, and actually beforehand how they buy sunglasses, like what are the different things that they might do, and how that process might change if we have this application. And we'll actually dig into what we have to build in order to support that process.
So now that we've done a card mapping, we're going to do a paper prototype. And this is something that we commonly do in the Innovation Lab. It's a great way to show what we'd like to do in a rough prototype that we can easily throw out, change, alter, based on feedback from the customers. I'll continue building individual paper slides, and our user experience specialist at Hotel will bring the prototype to a customer and say, okay, I have this app, and this is a paper version. I'd like you to kind of use it like you would normally use an app, and you can press things, interact with them, and then she'll change out the pages based on how the customer uses it. So it's a similar experience to the iPad, only an analog version. So it's day 2, and we have our first working prototype of this app. And how it works is I take my first pair of sunglasses, put it on, take a picture, all right, and then I want to compare it to this other pair I've got right here. Take these on, take another picture, and I can just hold these up like this and see which one I like better.
Well, Tel and Kim have been talking to people and doing paper prototypes. We've been coding, building an iPad. We take a stab at something, we look at paper prototypes that Kim put together. We might take one at a time. Usually we come to the board and we grab the most important feature and we start implementing it. The really cool thing with this flash build is that we have actual real customers. Just today we delivered 4 or 5 different separate features, and I delivered it, swapped the iPad with Tel. She'd go and talk to a customer, and 10 minutes later I had feedback from real customers about this thing that I delivered, and it changed how we did the next one. And it's been really, really great watching day to day what they've been doing, the team, to get all the feedback from the salespeople, the feedback the salespeople gather from the customers. And it's a really interesting process to kind of come in. On Tuesday, we had no idea what this would look like. There was an idea that somebody had to say, people take a lot of pictures of themselves with the sunglasses. It'd be cool if we could show them side by side to help them make the process better. And that was the idea, that was it. They came in, they had nothing built, and they've been building this literally on the spot throughout each day. And by now, we actually have an app, a functioning app that they can go through. It's very intuitive to help look at themselves and make the sunglass selection process easier, which is pretty cool to watch.
So yesterday, the sunglass buyer from Nordstrom came down to check out our progress, and she happened to put on polarized glasses and then held up the iPad in portrait view and was surprised that she couldn't see anything because it was black. And we figured out that polarization of the iPad running up and down and the polarization of the glasses running vertical cancel each other out and you don't see anything. But if you turn the iPad to landscape, you see perfectly fine because the polarization of the two items line up and it's okay. So it was a pretty good find to be in the store, and she just happened to put on polarized glasses. And so today, first thing we're going to do is switch it to a landscape design and then lock in the aspect ratio of the iPad so customers and salespeople just naturally pick it up and use it in landscape and not try to go to portrait.
Okay, so I'm going to show you what we've been working on the last 5 days. We've added quite a few features over the week. You take a picture, multiple pictures of the customer, and then hold them up. Tap the first one, you can see it larger, and then tap the second, and do a side-by-side comparison of each glass next to each other. We also added a feature where you can rename the picture, because we heard from salespeople, if a customer's trying on quite a lot of glasses, it's helpful to be able to know what order they were taken in, and also rename if you want with the brand or some distinguishing feature on the glass. Another feature we added was the ability to zoom. You can zoom in and really get a good detailed look at the frames side by side. Also, you'll see one of the pictures larger if you want to have just a better view of one frame. You can flip the camera view as well. Face it forward so the salesperson can take a picture of it like this, or you can flip the camera. So take the picture of yourself facing forward. And then at the end of it all, we have a button called New Customer, which just erases all of the images and allows the salesperson to start with a new customer.
We're just trying to put the final touches on the app. Until talked to a lot of users, and they said that when we went into the compare view, it was unclear where the pictures were coming from and which picture was which. So the animation here was trying to solve that problem, make it a little more clear what's going on. One of the challenges with software is what you've done, right? And I think the answer is really, it depends on how much time you have. At least the most important thing's got time. So this was time boxed to a week, and we did a week's worth of work, and it seems like what we have now is something that makes customers happy and addresses the main problems, and something that we can track, we have metrics on. So I think we're gonna call that a day.
The application has developed so far. Everything's finished, everything that we've asked for, and even the little roadblocks and glitches that we kind of stumbled across as we use the app during the week has been solved. I think that it's going to be really easy to be able to implement into our sale, and I think that we're going to find a lot of success with the application, whether it's via a selling tool for us or if it goes public into a downloadable format. Whatever happens, I think this was generally quite a success.
So it's interesting when you start looking at the difference between assumption-driven development and experiment-driven development. They look similar. How you attack the problem is different. So what we want to do is take 2 minutes, Mike, and ask tables real quickly. What I was curious to do is, what's different in what you saw, the way that they approach solving the customer problem? What's different in the way that they built software and interacted with their customers at Nordstrom? What's different about the way they interacted as a team compared to traditional ways of, let's call it assumption-driven development, where we think we know the answer, we're going to start building. So just take 2 minutes, considering how quickly things run, considering your release cycle, considering how questions get answered, and just jot some things down and have some quick conversations, and we'll debrief in like just 2 minutes.
example we tend to get into is you don't have wireframes, you're just iterating over and over again, but just by saying, this is paper, that's it, you don't get caught up in that. What do you think?
Well, it's good, but I don't know that they're really applicable in all of them. Feedback loop is long, that we feel are able to last time there's not even feedback. A product owner is pretty much already a company, you rely on the product owner to feedback. I don't know what they're saying is true. I don't think they even get feedback either.
Yeah, so a couple of things I noticed, and I'd love to hear if there's anything anyone particularly feels really passionate about from the audience. That when we start thinking about building any sort of software product or any product, based on the idea of experiments, is we have assumptions about the way things should or could work, and we'll start building something. But instead of saying we're going to actually bake in that assumption and do some analysis, we actually put it in front of our customers as quickly as possible. And it doesn't have to be a finished application. It doesn't have to be something we ship. It could be low fidelity. It could be, I'm going to draw on a piece of paper and walk across the street to the mall. And not, let me go ahead and build out a full UX lab. Let me go ahead and bring in everybody in to do some user studies. It's, let's quickly enable our teams to get in front of real customers, to get in front of real users, get in front of real people who have opinions to say, what do you think? A or B, left or right, blue or green? Anybody else notice anything significantly different about building things based off experiments compared to the way we normally build things based off assumptions? Yeah. No ceremonies, right. This is really built here around, we're going to go ahead and move into close as we can, immediate flow. This isn't, let's go ahead and build out a 1-week time box with the daily stand-up. There actually was, I think, some quick check-ins in the morning, but we're not doing full war sprint planning. We're not going to be doing a full war retrospective there on site. Our goal there is to take as much of that out of the way as possible, get in touch with our customers. Anybody else?
I like how much was on paper.
Yeah, and paper, the fidelity of the paper of it. The fact that we're not tied to the, I have to build something and I have to rely on these tools that I know. The fact that I can now get something in front of me as a quick sketch just to validate an assumption. And that's what it's about. It's validating that assumption is really important. And the stickies too. It's not let's put things in a tool and let's have things locked up in an information refrigerator. It's let's go back to have real information radiators here in front of our customers. Yeah. Right, it is. Let's talk to our customers directly. We know what the problem we want to solve is. We actually have customers who are saying that we want to improve our classes experience when we're actually shopping at a store. So let's talk to them. Let's actually find out what their real problems are, not filter that through a product owner who, while they do a great job most of the time, still has that filter and still has that separation from our actual customers. Yeah?
I think it's pretty important that they're in the context for the application.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's not we're going to simulate this and build this out in a test lab. It's here's the actual device because it shortens our delivery cycle and shortens the number of tests we have to do. And it's in the context so we can actually say, what actually are we going to actually do? I'm going to hold it versus portrait. Oh wait, now you can't see anything because the glasses are polarized. Oh wait, we actually need to make sure we understand how this operates in our physical space as well. That's huge. One more. Anyone else? Yeah.
One developer, when he said, I just wrote this code, handed the iPad over, and it came back in 10 minutes.
Right. Right. And we talk about continuous delivery and getting things out to production as quickly as possible. I just built this. What do you think? Hey, great idea. Try it now. That feedback cycle is so important when we're trying to make sure we understand the problem we're trying to solve and shorten our feedback loop to validate our experiments.
And that is also a cycle of innovation. And working closely with the customer like that, you will have great ideas, they will have great ideas, and that innovation factor really kicks in there. So I promised you a tangible technique. Here's 4 steps to experiment-driven development. Step number 1, start with a product hypothesis. If you've been to the sessions today, you've probably heard this word, hypothesis. And there are different types of hypotheses. It can be a customer hypothesis, a problem hypothesis, a solution hypothesis, a value or growth hypothesis. And here's some examples. For one of these, for a problem example, potential customers have no easy way to compare different versions of sunglasses. I don't know if you've gotten new glasses recently, but I really did not like the experience. I was trying on a pair, then I'd set it down, then I'd try on another pair. And in my mind, I'd have to try to think, what did I look like with the previous pair on? And can my brain do that magical comparison? And I was struggling. And finally, I just found these and said, ring me up. So
Obviously, you never shopped at Nordstrom's.
I didn't shop at Nordstrom's. Okay, second activity is this. So I want you to think about a product that you're currently working on, okay? And individually, use the index cards at your table and write out a hypothesis statement for your product. And identify it as one of these 5 types. And if I'll leave these up as examples to kind of guide you, but there's no right or wrong here. Just think about the product that you're currently working on and write a hypothesis, the highest level hypothesis statement you can think of. Ready, go, 2 minutes. No. It's right. But I'm just going to leave it.
Right.
I'll just leave it. Remind me not to say it. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and stop right there. Now, you have a high-level product hypothesis, and generally that's used within a lightweight business case to make the case for the return on investment for your product. Step number 2, based on that hypothesis, identify your baked-in assumptions. And I use this little diagram of the dead person there because this is what kills products. The baked-in assumptions. Remember I mentioned assumption-driven development, and we built all these features assuming the end customers would need them or take advantage of them, and they never did, and there was never a market. So ask yourself, what assumptions are baked into the hypotheses? And here's some examples from the Nordstrom video, and in particular, all customers will be comfortable using an iPad, including the elderly. Okay, that's a baked-in assumption of this product. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Next activity, take your product hypothesis statement and jot down 2 or 3 baked-in assumptions for your product hypothesis. And get that done in about 2 minutes. And then the last minute of this, stand up, and if you see somebody else standing, go meet them, introduce yourself, and share your hypothesis and assumptions with each other, with a person from a different table. Okay? Ready to go.
If you can share it.
Yeah, if it's confidential, obviously, just say something like that.
So we're at the point now, we've got about 20 seconds before we start standing up and sharing some assumptions.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. Just stand up, find somebody that's standing, and
About 30 seconds left, so if you guys haven't had a chance to stand up and share, please do.
Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get back to our tables. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Folks, let's keep going so we can get to the real fun stuff. So step number three is take your highest priority assumption. Way to go. Thank y'all. You are doing fantastic. Step number 3, take your highest priority assumption and define the smallest experiment you can to prove or disprove that assumption. And it may not even be working software. It may be a mock, it may be a paper prototype, it may be a magician behind the curtain. Anything to prove or disprove that assumption. Here's an example from the Nordstrom video. All customers will be comfortable using an iPad, including the elderly. And then the experiment is for every customer that comes in that looks over 50, show them the demo, how it works on the iPad, and then ask them if they would rather pick and choose glasses on their own, or would they prefer to use the iPad. track those metrics, and that's a good A/B test. And based on that, we'll learn what the preference of folks that hold are.
And I'll bring you my iPad later, Mike, so we can show you how to use it.
That's right. I need all the help I can get.
You're welcome. I do what I do.
I was telling Raz at the break, you may have overheard me. I've never even been in a Nordstrom's before, but they have a rack store, is what I understand. So that would be for me. And here's an example of where an assumption is actually 2 experiments, and one does involve software development. From a Scrum perspective, keep experiments inside your product backlog and call that an experiment backlog. And you can always tag those experiments with your assumption. One thing we did at Nielsen when we used this technique was we used kind of a derivative of the story map technique. We called it a learning map, but in reality we just made all of our assumptions visible and the experiments associated with each of those assumptions visible. And obviously prioritization is left to right, and then on the experiments is top to bottom. And then step number 4, run experiments. And generally we're going to do this using the build, measure, learn loop. We're going to build the smallest product or mock possible in order to gain learnings. And then we're going to measure what, based on analytics or witnessing how the user is actually interacting with our system, and then learn from that. And learnings will often cause adjustments to your experiment backlog, and may also possibly cause some adjustments to your assumption. And in the pretty rare case, you'll even adjust your hypotheses based on the learning. So definitely some reevaluation and reordering there. When you're running the experiments, you'll want to consider changing your definition of done to include validated learning from the end user's perspective. And another way to do that is include a final column in your Kanban called validate. And then, here's the classic Scrum Sprints. These experiment test iterations are actually variable iteration length, or you can think of them as sub-iterations within the Scrum Sprint. But basically, it's get to the learning as quickly as possible. And what we did at Nielsen is we found it logistically difficult to get everybody to show up for the ceremonies associated with these ETIs. So we superimposed the Scrum 4-week, or it was actually a Scrum 2-week sprint on top of this. And then we just demonstrated any working software. We talked about our validated learnings from the end user, and then any pivot or persevere type decisions. And then an ETI review, the most important is the pivot, persevere, or quit decision based out of that. And then we also, again, explore assumptions. Now we have one final thing to do today. It should be fun. I'm going to turn it over to Brad. It's a project simulation.
Thank you, Mike. So this is where I'm actually ready to step up again. But before we step up and start moving around, everybody's got nice little squishy balls on your table. Grab 1 or 2 and take them with you. Self-organized teams about 5 or 6. Hopefully everybody's played the ball game. Yes. If not, we'll do some quick how to play the ball game. So everybody up and form into teams of 5 or 6 real quick.
5 to 6 would be the ideal size of your team. I changed that.
So as we're going ahead and forming teams of 5 or 6, if you haven't played the ball game, I'm going to explain the rules really briefly. Here's my hypothesis. Now I like to start being able to run some experiments and validate. And when I say I'd like to run them, I'd like you guys to run them. My hypothesis is that as a team, we can score 50 points in the ball game in 1 round of 1 minute. And so part of the reason we're moving quickly is we want to actually get a couple rounds in and try some experiments. Here are the rules of the ballpoint game. So each team has balls. To score a point, the ball has to touch every person in the team. It can't go directly side by side, so you can't do it right to the person next to you. It has to have at least one person between you and the next person. And the ball has to be in the air for some brief period of time. Every time it touches everybody's hands, that's a point. Does that make sense?
Roman voting real quick. Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Everybody get it? No problem. Ball has to go. Everybody on the team has to touch a ball. It cannot go to the person right next to you. And it has to have some measurable amount of airtime. And once it touches everybody on the team, it's a point. My hypothesis is that we can get 50 points in one round. What we're going to do is take 2 minutes and write down some assumptions, and then we're actually start doing this stuff. So, Mike, you want to set a timer for me? No. 2 minutes. What assumptions do we have about how we're going to be able to work? What might work? How could we do this? What assumptions do we have about how we're going to play this game that we can start testing? And, as a team, what experiment can we run to actually make sure that assumption is true? Does that make sense?
So what assumptions are baked in, and then what experiment is the smallest thing you can do to verify that assumption? To prove or disprove the assumption. We can get through 2 rounds if they're gracious enough to us.
So just under a minute before we start actually playing the game, hopefully you have some assumptions and some ways to test your assumptions here. All right, 10 seconds. And then we're going to start a 1 minute round. 2, 1. Let's go. Make sure somebody's keeping track of the score. We've got these guys over here doing pretty good. If it touches the ground, it doesn't count.
You should be
30 seconds. Obviously, you guys should be about 25 points already. Balls are flying everywhere. 2, 1. All right, everybody stop. So real quickly, so we can get another round in. Did you validate any of your assumptions? Did you invalidate any of your assumptions? Does anybody need to change their hypothesis? Does everybody remember what the hypothesis was? My hypothesis is that we could get 50 points in one round. Is that still a valid hypothesis? No. So, let me give you a new hypothesis. I'll be nice to you guys and say you can do 40. Is that a valid hypothesis? Take 2 minutes. And what assumptions are you making, other than Braz is crazy, and he's a hard taskmaster? Take 2 minutes. Take 1 minute. Mike says 1 minute so we don't end up getting kicked out of the room. Take 1 minute and figure out what your new assumptions are and how you're going to test them.
Yeah, folks, this is not the game. You're just adjusting your experiments. Adjust your experiments.
In 1 minute, we'll do round 2. About 15 seconds before round 2. How else could you be testing your assumptions about how you can get to 40 points? Does Brad actually know how to count? And ready? Time's up. Time goes now. 1 minute. Round 2. Balls are starting to move. 50 seconds. So obviously with 50 seconds there, which would be 45 seconds to basically get 10 points. $32. Seconds.
Okay, stop.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. From the outside. Rounds up. So hold on real quickly, everybody, so we can wrap this up. And I appreciate you guys being so responsive. So here's my question for everyone. Who hit 40?
Yes.
See?
All right.
Who hit 50? Yeah. No. Everybody has to touch it, 1 point. Still 40? How about 50? Exactly? All right, validated by mouth. Does anybody else get 40? Okay, awesome. So here's my question for you guys to wrap this up. One thing I noticed is we had a lot of assumptions that we weren't validating. How could we have validated quicker? What could we have done during our 2 minutes of planning to start validating assumptions? Ask questions. Talk to other teams. Move around the room and see what's working and what's not. Right? What's that? It is. It's a really short time frame, but the goal here is to get as quickly as possible, even if it is step 1 over. What are you guys doing? How can I notice you guys are actually starting to do something interesting? Quick opportunities to learn from each other really fast.
And hey folks, here's a final summary. The first 4 you see up there are really the 4 steps. And within the build, measure, learn loop is this concept of validated learning and the pivot or persevere decision. But it all leads to working the right product. So thank you all for attending today. Take some squishy balls with you. Oh, the slides are also already out there on the website. Feel free to download those and get more details about it.
If you have any questions, please come by our booth and tell us. Thank you.